Greetings everyone, this is A Shot of Whiskey. This video is going to be me doing a half-assed response to a stream that happened on Sunday where Undead Chronic finally got an opportunity to debate Andrew Wilson. There was a moderator, I don't remember her exact name, it's something like Sarah the Raging Tomato or something weird like that. But she is the gal who about a year ago threatened to unalive Undead Chronic during a stream. And of course YouTube has done bumfuck nothing about it. But before we get into the actual discussion, I wanted to bring up this image that you guys are looking at. You've probably seen it briefly in a couple of videos I've done in the past few weeks. And you may remember about 2 or 3 months ago, I said something about how I wanted to hire someone to do some character art type of stuff based off of this idea that I had. This is kind of what it was. I used an AI program to kind of fake it for now. And I will admit, it's not a bad-looking image, especially since the prompt that I gave was very brief and vague. But it's for the most part what I want. It's not exact, and if I ever do look to hire someone to make an actual image, I'll clarify what I want different. That being said, I know somebody has said that he would be willing to do it. I feel kind of like an ass because I don't remember who that was. And to make me feel even more like an ass, I think I might. And if I'm correct with who I think it might be, I don't remember how to say your name. I'm so sorry, French Mikey. That's pretty much how I've been referring to you in my head, is French Mikey. I want to say it's pronounced Michelle or something to that effect. I am so sorry. If I'm wrong or if I'm close but still way off, I'm sorry. I'm a stupid American. I get it. One who's also often sleep deprived, like right now. My brain's not exactly the greatest shape right now. So much so that I've actually made notes to follow. There's no script. This is just me kind of BSing it. But yeah, so that's the basic idea. And if I ever do get to a point where I'm willing to pay someone to make actual art, it probably won't be for a few months. And that's mainly because of certain financial issues that have recently come up in my personal life. So, now that I got that done and out of the way, let's go ahead and go on with why I am making this video. Let's start with an argument that Andrew brought up, which I think he did this because he thought this was some sort of a gotcha against Chronic's basic premise, that being a stepfather is a cuckold. He asked the question, and he only felt comfortable with doing this because Chronic confirmed that he identifies as being some type of a Christian. Is Joseph a cuck because he raised Jesus from an infant? Chronic and I have kind of the same opinion on this. To a degree, yes, he was being a cuck. Somebody in the chat, I don't remember this person's name. I'm guessing they may have been more of an Andrew Wilson fanboy who thought that they were going to troll our side. Smoke was in his name. That was it. And I will admit, it could have been a woman. I'm just going to assume it's a man. But they said that Chronic's opinion on this was blasphemy. So whoever this individual is, you're an idiot. I said it before, I'll say it again, you're an idiot. And I really wish that I could remember your name, so that way I could put it in the title so I can at you, and you can see my response, which is going to include why I'm correct and you are not. So, I pointed out that it's not blasphemy because Joseph was not God. Here's the dictionary definition, specifically from dictionary.com. I'll leave this up here for a while so you guys can read this if you want. But basically, the overall summary is, if something is going to be an act of blasphemy, it has to be against God or a god or something that is sacred. Joseph is neither of those things. So, saying that, pointing out a fact-based opinion of a character from the Bible is not an act of blasphemy. Not even by Christian standards. At least, not according to any denomination that I'm aware of. So to try to get this person to understand, I pointed out another biblical character that, if we were to honestly look at this person, we can point out flaws with them. Which I pointed out, Samson. He was a fool for being in a romantic relationship with Delilah, mainly because Delilah was from the enemy. She was not a Jew. She was not one of Samson's people. She was quite literally a Philistine Therefore, their enemy. Little side note. Not too long ago, my son read the story of Samson, and I realized the place where Samson killed the Philistines, by pushing apart the pillars and made the building collapse and killing everybody there, that took place in Gaza. Holy shit. So, moving on. So whether you call Samson a fool or a simp would be a good way to put it. That's not an act of blasphemy. That's stating an opinion based off of facts stated in the Bible. So, according to the definitions that you can see here, I don't see how he could come to that conclusion. He also did not understand why I was bringing up Samson. He actually had the gall to assume that I was calling Samson a cuck. It's like, no, he's not a cuck. I'm saying to critically comment on a character from the Bible is not the same thing as being blasphemous. But he did not understand that because he is, factually speaking, an idiot. Now, you guys, I'm assuming you're all capable of understanding this before I even bring this up. However, I'm still going to go ahead and do some examples to further elaborate on this, because who knows, Smokey the Doofus might be here. It is not blasphemous to point out that Moses did not speak publicly all that well. That's actually in Scripture. It is not blasphemous to point out that Peter denied Christ 3 times shortly after his crucifixion. That's biblical. It is not blasphemous to point out that King David had an affair and had her husband killed. That's biblical. It is not blasphemous to point out that Thomas denied the idea that Jesus resurrected, saying that he would not believe until he had the opportunity to shove his fingers into Christ's nail holes. It is not blasphemous to point out that Esther changed her name to hide her Jewish heritage from Hadassah for the sake of her not being exposed. That's not blasphemous. It's not blasphemous to point out that Judas betrayed Jesus for 30 silver pieces. None of that is blasphemous. Pointing out that Hosea married a whore is not blasphemous. Pointing out negatives that people do or negatives that people have, it's critiquing, it's analyzing, and in a lot of cases it helps to appreciate what they go through depending on the situation. That does not mean it's blasphemous. None of them are God. None of them are anything or anyone who's sacred. Now, Moses and David's kind of debatable because of the Jewish perspective, and to an extent also with most denominations of Christianity, but not to the point to where I would say speaking facts about them from the texts of the Bible, that's not blasphemy. So going back to the Andrew question catalyst that led to this last 6 minutes of talking, Andrew actually believed that he made a good comparison to Joseph and him. That's a terrible argument, and it's mainly because Mary did not have sex with another man and produce a bastard. She was divinely blessed by God for the sake of fulfilling Holy Scripture prophecy stuff. Now, Joseph considered himself to be a man of God. He genuinely believed this stuff. He followed it to a T to the best of his ability, but he's a human, so of course he's going to screw up every now and then. When he was told by an angel that Mary is telling you the truth, she did not cheat on you, this is a divine blessing, and God wants you to be the stepdaddy to take care of Jesus, Joseph obeyed. And I'm pretty sure he even apologized to Mary. Just a little side note. It's not the same thing as what Andrew did, which was he married a woman who was a single mother. This is not the same thing as marrying a 304 who banged another human and produced non-divine offspring. None of Rachel Wilson's kids are a holy deity. None of them are a prophet. So to make this comparison is, honestly, it's ass backwards and desperate. Now, another thing that I wanted to point out from the stream is Chronic brought up how cuckoldry is somewhat like a mountain. The higher up you go, the bigger the cuck you are. Well, I can understand the metaphor, but I don't really know if Andrew fully got what Chronic was trying to say. It sounded to me like he was conflating Jack Murphy levels to taxpayers, to everything. Anything that may or may not have cuck anything attached to it, it's all on the same level. That's kind of the impression that I got. Unfortunately, they didn't really go into this a whole lot. I personally would have been like, okay, you're not getting the concept, so I'm going to try this at another approach. I have another analogy. Think of cuckoldry as like criminality. There are many different levels to criminality. You call someone a cuck, that could mean a multitude of things that has some sort of a connection. You call someone a criminal, that has a whole lot of different possibilities to it that all have a commonality. One group is cucks, the other group is criminals. You could be a child who steals a candy from the store, or an adult. I mean, let's be real. An adult's more likely to get in trouble with the law for stealing candy than a kid. You could be guilty of tax evasion. That's another form of crime. In fact, I think it counts as a felony. You can spray graffiti on buildings. You could be guilty of third-degree murder or first-degree murder. They're both murder, but they have different degrees to them. Why? Because they're different. One is more extreme than the other, to put it mildly. You could also naughty touch a child. That makes you a criminal of a completely different sort. You could be guilty of every single thing that I've listed and even a few more things here and there. And I'm hoping you guys all get this picture. There's different types of a criminal. There's different types of crime that someone could be guilty of. And the same thing is true with being a cuck. It means different things. And I kind of agree with the point that Chronic was making, that in a way, we're all cucks because we all pay taxes, and all of our tax dollars, well, not all of our tax dollars, but our tax dollars, one of the things that it goes to is supporting single mothers and their children. Also kind of relating to that, going back to the chat, Chronic brought up, once the chat was over, I kind of listened to like the first 10 minutes or so of it, and then I left. But he brought up the possibility of doing like, which I think he actually read this off somebody else's idea. I may be remembering that part wrong. But he was basically thinking about doing like a cuck mountain video at some points. And I had brought up the idea of doing, which nobody responded to what I said specifically, so that kind of made me a little bummed out, but whatever. I had said something along the lines of, it would be great to do a Charlie the Unicorn parody. You remember this cartoon? We're going to Candy Mountain, Charlie. Well, instead of Candy Mountain, have it be Cuckold Mountain. We're going to Cuckold Mountain, Chronic. Come with us to Cuckold Mountain, Chronic. No, fuck off. I think that would be great. Swim away, beta fish, swim away. Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you guys about something. With this, as well as most of my rants that I do that's more than 5 minutes long, I tend to break it up into parts because, for whatever reason, Audacity tends to dick out on me when I do something too long, this being one of them. So I had to re-record that last little bit just before that joke, and I'm also going to throw in a little something extra that, honestly, I completely forgot to mention, which is that I think Andrew did bring up a decent point, which was that he asked Chronic to define the term cuck. And with all due respect to the Green Skin Commander, I found his attempt to define it as being kind of on the weak side. Now, since this is a last-minute add-in on my part, I'm going to just simply say what my definition is. Much like many words in our language, including the one that I cited earlier, cuck has more than one definition that I use. In fact, I can sum it up into two basic ideas. And I'm going to actually show them to you guys as well. Number one, any man who takes on the financial and or custodial duties of another man's offspring, whether knowingly or not, provided that said other man and mother in question are not biologically related to the man in question or his wife/girlfriend. This is why, in my opinion, Joseph was a cuck. Jesus was not the biological offspring of Joseph. This is also why Andrew Wilson is a cuck. He knowingly took on the artificial daddy role for at least 2 of Rachel's kids, at least to my knowledge and understanding. Now, I threw in the part about biological connection because I do think that there can be some exceptions, which they did bring up orphans, or not orphans, but adopting at one point. And I say that kind of depends on the situation. And I'm about to provide one of those said situations. I've mentioned before that I have sisters, and all 3 of my sisters have at least one child. If something happened to her, God forbid, as well as the biological father, and somebody had to take on the duty of raising the child or children, depending on which sister it is, I would be willing to take on the responsibility of substitute dad in that case. I would be willing to take them into my household and to raise them, to take care of them and whatnot, because they are family. And I do think that that's an exception to the rule. But as far as men who do take on the whole stepdaddy thing, I know that we do kind of talk about why that's not the best thing for a man to do, but in a way I can also kind of see where he's coming from. Especially in situations where the mother actually allows him to be a dad rather than doing what most mothers do, which is to basically just treat him as an ATM with a dildo attached to it. Definition number 2. Any man, whether knowingly or not, who is in a romantic relationship with a woman that is engaging in some form of sexual intercourse with at least one other person than the man in question while in a relationship with him. This is where males like Jack Murphy and Destiny fit in. They know that the women that they were with are getting dicked down by other men. And at least in the case of Jack Murphy, he enjoyed watching it. I don't know about in the case of Destiny. And with that being said, I do disagree with Chronic on something that he brought up that he sees as being something that counts as a cuck. I don't. Which is a man who marries a woman who has had sexual partners before him, basically rejecting the whole no hymen, no diamond thing. There are terms that I think could have applied to that, but cuck is not one of them. I really don't. Unless she's still boffing these guys, then he'd be a cuck. But if that chapter in her life is done, and she's just with this one guy that's marrying her, I do not see that as cucketry. All right, so I'm going to take this opportunity to go ahead and wrap things up here, mainly because I don't want this video to be too long. I mean, it's already looking like it's going to be at least 15 minutes. I wasn't planning on that. So my overall take on how the debate itself went, like many of those who were there, I was also hoping to see Chronic rip Andrew a new smoking hole, but I knew he was going to be civil about it, for the most part, which he did a good job of that. And he even said before it actually started that he was expecting Andrew to do the majority of the talking, and he would just do a couple of responses here and there, maybe ask a question kind of thing. It sounded like Chronic knew the best approach. Well, of course, he knew the best approach to what he did. And he even said himself that he thought that it was possible that Andrew was going to, quote-unquote, win the debates just because Andrew was going to talk so damn much. I personally, based off of how I usually look at these debates, I do it from one of 2 different perspectives. One of them, there's no way we would have been able to tell, at least not that I'm aware of, which is to have the audience determine. Was there anybody on the warband side who was going to admit that Andrew was right? Was there anybody on Andrew's side who was going to admit that Chronic had a point? I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't look into that. I have no way of knowing how. So the other option is how much changing or admitting can one side do? And that was worded terribly. That's where I think Chronic won the debates. And it's because Andrew admitted that Chronic was correct about the main point of the debates, which is that Andrew Wilson is a cuck because he married a single mother and helped raise her children that were not his. So there you go. As far as I'm concerned, that makes Chronic the winner. It's definitely not like a clean sweep win like what the New York Giants did to my Seahawks. Oh my God, that game was so terrible. We deserve to have lost that one as far as I'm concerned. Fuck. Just when I thought the Seahawks were going to be freaking amazing this year, they ended up fucking failing. What does football have to do with this? So yeah, I say Chronic won just from that principle alone, but it's not really much of one where there was a whole lot of, like, it wasn't a clean-cut victory. It was one of those where it's like, well, how do you define victory? I'm sure people on Andrew's side have come up with different reasons to say why Andrew won. And who knows, maybe some of them have some good points. Don't know. I'm not one of them. I mean, I enjoy watching him eviscerate these 3 or 4s and feminists and whatnot, but I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of his, especially since he doesn't like the red pill, mainly because, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't know what the fuck the red pill is. I've heard that he's talked shit about MGTOW. It wouldn't surprise me, but I personally haven't heard it myself. But yeah, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me. So, let me know what you guys think, especially if you saw the stream. What did you take out of it? I'm actually kind of thinking about maybe going back to listening to all of what was said with Chronic, and I think Kite and Chaz joined him at one point. See how things went, because if you go to Chronic's channel, you see that entire stream lasted well over 2 hours. The debate itself wasn't even 45 minutes long. So I know Chronic had to have done quite a decent amount of talking. Who knows? He may have mentioned other stuff too. So yeah, anyways, sorry. I'm kind of rambling. It's kind of one of the flaws with me not making a script. So in the meantime, everyone, I hope you guys enjoy this shit show that I've made. And I'll get back to making shorter roasts of different people on the internets. I think you guys are really going to like the next one that I've got planned. So until then, peace out, and never forget that if you abuse alcohol, it will abuse you back.